The power system in Skyrim is an interesting case. They provide incredible bonuses to the player, while having the catch of only being able to activate them once per day. While anyone can get around this catch by just waiting 24 hours in-game, it just goes to show that these powers are incredibly good in order to have a cooldown like that. Let's go through all 38 powers in the game and see which ones are the best and which ones are the worst. I'll be ranking every ability in Skyrim that can be found in the power section of the magic menu, besides a few exceptions. I'm not going to rank anything that can only be acquired through the Creation Club, since I'm not yet familiar with all of them yet. I will also not be ranking any of the werewolf or vampire lord powers, since they completely differ from the traditional powers in the game, and they would be very difficult to rank among every other power in the game. I'll be ranking these powers based on their versatility, their overall effectiveness, and their usefulness to the player in their playthrough. Lastly, this list is completely my opinion. It's just made for fun, so if you see your favorite power low on the list, don't cry about it. Instead, feel free to calmly explain your counterpoint in the comments below like a rational human being. Remember, there are no bad powers in Skyrim. They are all good in some way, but I had to put something in the last few spots, or else it wouldn't really be a list, now would it? Without further ado, let's get right into the video. The Breath of the Chalk releases a blast of steam at your opponents that deal 15 damage per second at the cost of some stamina. While this effect is only okay, it has another catch to it. It requires that the unique Dwarven helmet, the Visage of Mizund, is equipped in order to use. The helmet itself is actually really good, but this means that you must have a heavy armor build in order to use it without making yourself weaker. This power also drains a good amount of your stamina, which you could use for power attacks that might deal more damage than this blast. Once you get to higher levels, your power attacks will be dealing more damage than this power ever could. Vampire Seduction allows you to calm a single target for 30 seconds. You can get this by being a Stage 2 vampire. This calm effect can be pretty useful in some situations. However, the fact that you can only calm one target per day and the low level cap makes it pretty underwhelming. Command Animal will force an animal to fight for you for 60 seconds. This is the Wood Elf racial ability. For the most part, animals aren't that difficult to deal with outside of the early game. Also, while there are a ton of animals all over Skyrim, you don't really find any to control where you would need an ally the most. You can't exactly find animals in ancient tombs, dwarven ruins, forts, major cities, and most other dungeons in the game. It could definitely help out against saber cats and mammoths in legendary difficulty, but it's not that helpful otherwise. The Shadow Stone allows you to become invisible for 60 seconds. You get this by activating the Shadow Standing Stone. Sacrificing all other Standing Stone abilities just to turn yourself invisible isn't a good trade-off. I'd rather use a Potion of Invisibility or an invisibility spell while also benefiting from other Standing Stones like the Ritual Stone or the Steed Stone or the Thief Stone. Black Market will summon a Daedric Merchant for you to use. He has 2,000 gold and a few enchanted items to sell, and his stock resets every 2 days. There are so many merchants in Skyrim, so I don't really find this one useful. It could help if you run out of carry weight in the middle of a dungeon, but as you'll see, there is a better option for that. It's interesting though, he is the only merchant in the entire game that can sell Daedric weapons based on your level. But you'll likely already have your own by the time that he starts to do that. Secret of Strength makes it so that power attacks cost 0 stamina for 60 seconds. You might think that this effect can't possibly be one of the worst in the game, but I'll argue that it is. Yes, this power does enable you to have infinite power attacks, but since you only need 1 stamina to use a power attack anyways, a consumable like vegetable soup will give you the ability to power attack infinitely. So this power is outclassed by a very easy to acquire consumable in the game. The only way I can see this power being useful is if you plan to power attack and then save your stamina to run or sneak roll away, which doesn't seem like an effective strategy in most fights. Other stamina powers can affect all of your abilities instead of just the power attacks, which is why I think that Secret of Strength is just not that good. But let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on this. I find this power to be next to useless, as long as you have a vegetable soup in your inventory. But if you don't, I guess it's not that bad. Mora's Grasp will freeze a target in place for 30 seconds. You can acquire this by completing the Black Book, the Hidden Twilight. Enemies can't deal damage to you, and you can't deal damage to them. Because of this, there isn't really a good reason to use this power in most situations. It could help if you need to recover health or magicka, or retreat, but besides that, it just pauses the fight for 30 seconds. Also, it doesn't really help against a large group of opponents because you can only freeze one target. The Serpent Stone paralyzes a target for 5 seconds and it deals a little bit of damage to them. You can acquire the Serpent Stone power, well, at the Serpent Stone, of course. Just like the Shadow Stone, you lose all other Standing Stone bonuses to get this ability to paralyze one target per day. It's a useful effect, but there are better powers on this list, and you can also just use a paralyze spell. Vampire Sight will give night vision to the player. It's great for sneak or archer builds when playing in a dark environment, but besides that, it's just okay. You also have the downside of needing to be a vampire to get this, and you have to deal with all of the downsides of that playstyle as well. So, in short, it's great for some vampire builds, but besides that, it's just okay. So as we get to this part of the ranking, I think that most of these remaining powers are worth getting in your playthrough. They're pretty decent, but some are better than others. We'll start this one off with Vampire's Servant. This power allows you to resurrect a dead body to help you fight for 60 seconds. This power gets stronger as you progress through the stages of vampirism. So it's a pretty solid power, but it's not as impressive as others on this list, but it's definitely worth it if you decide to go down the vampire route. Up next is Night Eye. Night Eye allows the Dragonborn to gain night vision to help them in the dark. It's the racial power for the Khajiit. This power is great for stealth characters operating in dark caves and other areas without alerting enemies with a light source. It's great for a stealth build, and it has no recharge. It's pretty useful, but it won't help you if, let's say, you're fighting a dragon or something. So there's that to consider, but it's definitely a solid power in this game. Secret Servant will summon a Dremora Butler, which will help you carry items for you. It's a reward option at the end of the Black Book Untold Legends. It can help for players who don't use a follower much in their game, but it only has a carry weight of 148, so it isn't game changing or anything like that. I was actually planning on putting this power very low on the list until I realized that you can basically use it to smuggle items with you to places where you can't normally get them, like Sidna Mine, the Thalmor Embassy, or jails and other prisons, so that's pretty cool. It's also nice that this power has no recharge, so you can use it whenever you want. So this power has some pretty unique outside of combat utility, so that's nice. The Embrace of Shadows power will give the player a night vision effect and will make them invisible for 180 seconds. You have to be a stage 4 vampire to access it. As I've said in other videos, I think that the invisibility effect is overrated, because invisibility potions exist, and the fact that it dispels after you do any action at all kinda blows. But it does combine well with the night vision effect. It's a pretty useful tool for stealth vampires, especially since they can only really stay in dark locations. But I don't see how this power could be useful in other situations. I just don't think it's that versatile. So, it's going to be this low on the list. The Root of Power makes all spells cost 75% less to cast for 60 seconds. It has a one-time use, but then it must be acquired at the Tree Stone again. It's a pretty decent power for most mage characters, but so many other powers on this list will overshadow it. Also, like the other stone powers here, it's annoying to have to go back to the stone to use it again, so that's also something to take into consideration. It's not a bad power to have in your back pocket when you need it the most, but other than that, it's just okay. Bardic Knowledge summons a ghostly drum that follows you around for 5 minutes. Yes, a literal drum. This little guy grants a stamina regen to you and other allies that stand around it. You can get this from the Black Book Untold Legends. It's really good on quests where you have a group of allies with you, but the stamina regen is pretty weak. The long duration is certainly an upside, but you can also use vegetable soup to get a somewhat similar result in stamina regen. Adrenaline Rush is the Red Guard racial ability. It drastically increases stamina regen for 30 seconds whenever it's used. It's pretty good for being able to deal more damage in a fight with power attacks. However, since power attacks only need 1 stamina to activate, you only need to use vegetable soup to get that infinite power attack effect. Still, it's a great power to help you out with anything that doesn't involve power attacking, like running, stealth rolling, or using Eagle Eye with a bow. It's not the greatest racial power on this list, but it gets the job done. Ancestor's Wrath will create a Fire Cloak effect on the player, dealing 8 points of damage per second to nearby enemies for 60 seconds. It's a pretty solid way to get extra damage in a fight if you decide to make a Dark Elf Warrior build, and it's also great against groups of enemies too. However, this power won't outright win any battles for you like other powers and racial abilities would in the game. It's never not going to be useful, but at the same time, it's not really the best power either. Sunflare is a power that will release a blast of 100 fire damage to opponents around the player when it's used. It sounds great, which it is, but you do need to visit the Sunstone every time you want to activate this ability again, which is just so annoying. Other than that though, it's a helpful power for many situations, especially against the undead or frost enemies. Voice of the Emperor will calm anyone down in a radius around the player. This is the Imperial racial ability. It's really good for just stopping the fight in order to escape when a fight goes wrong, and the level cap is also set at 99, so that's not really an issue like other calm spells. Its use is limited though, since dealing damage to enemies that are calmed by this power will cause them to aggro again. Besides that, the Voice of the Emperor is a tool that will sometimes come in handy. North Wind will activate a blizzard effect around the player, which will deal damage to opponents over time. It can be acquired at the Windstone after a certain part in the Dragonborn DLC, but you must travel to the Windstone to get it again after every time you use it. It's great to handle most enemies, especially in large groups. Unfortunately, it is a one-time use power, and many enemies have resistance to the cold. It's still a decent way to get extra damage though in most encounters. Up next is Bones of the Earth. This ability grants the Dragonborn a Dragonhide spell effect. This can be acquired at the Earthstone, however, you must return to the Earthstone after every time you use it in order to get this ability again. It's certainly a help in most fights, but having to return to the stone again and again after every time you use it is a pain. Dragonskin is the Breton racial ability. It will allow you to absorb 50% of the magicka from hostile spells for 60 seconds. Combine this with the Atronach perk from the Alteration skill tree, and the effects from the Atronach stone, and you will be an absolute menace to any wizard, witch, or warlock in the game. There are other ways to fight against magical forces for non-magic users, such as Spellbreaker or Armor Enchants. You can also use a ward if you are a magic user, but this ability is still great for magic users and non-magic users alike, since you can practically cut any magic damage in half with the press of a button. It's not useful for every single situation out there, but it's pretty dang good at what it's trying to do. Nightingale Strife will release a blast of energy at a target and steal up to 100 health from them. You can get this power near the end of the Thieves Guild questline. This effect can hit multiple targets, which will deal more damage, but it can only heal a maximum of 100 health per use. It's a good power to use for pretty much every encounter you can think of. It's definitely versatile. However, 100 health steal really isn't the greatest, and it simply might not be enough to make a difference in the more difficult encounters the game has to offer. It's still a great power though. When activated, Summon Spectral Assassin will summon the legendary assassin, Lucien Lachance, to fight for you. You can acquire this power after getting to a certain point in the Dark Brotherhood questline. He will help you until he is defeated. Note that he does not expire by time. He does not have a level cap as well, which is nice. For my testing, this summon is actually pretty tanky, but he doesn't deal a lot of damage to your foes. Overall, there are better conjuration summons in the game, but he will be a fine addition to any player that does not utilize the Conjuration School of Magic. This power is solid. On activation, Waters of Life will grant you and nearby allies 200 health. You can get this at the Waterstone, however, you must return to the Waterstone after every time you use this power. It can definitely save you in pretty much every situation, which is a great benefit, but having to go all the way back to the Waterstone to get this again kinda sucks. Still, it's a solid power, and it's good to have in your back pocket for when you need it the most. On activation, Conjure Werebear will summon a werebear creature to fight for you for 60 seconds. You can get this one at the Beast Stone, but you must return to the Beast Stone after every single use in order to get it again. The werebear creature is very powerful. Through my testing, it was able to hold against many different kinds of enemies, and even at a high level. It's got a lot of health and deals some decent damage. It's really good, but the one-time use condition does drag this power lower on the list. It's still an interesting power though, because there's nothing else quite like it in the game. Found as a reward in the Black Book, The Hidden Twilight, Mora's Boon will completely fill the player's health, stamina, and magicka when used. Yeah, it's a pretty simple power, but it's one of the most versatile powers in the entire game. Allowing you to fully recover every attribute mid-fight is really helpful, no matter the circumstances of the situation. There are some more interesting, overpowered, and impressive powers down the remainder of the list, but you can't deny that Mora's Boon is really good. The Secret of Protection power will cut in half the damage you take from any source for 30 seconds. You can get this power as a reward option in the Black Book, Filament, and Filigree. This power is great for any warrior builds. It's simple, reliable, versatile, but a little boring. Not much else to really comment on here, it's a solid power. Mora's Agony will summon an area of tentacles that will poison and stagger enemies who enter it for 30 seconds. You can get this as a reward in the Black Book, The Hidden Twilight. It might not seem like much when you first see it, but it's a really good power when you actually try it. This power will basically stun any enemies that get near the area of effect, and it deals pretty good poison damage. Enemies will be constantly staggered while they are caught in this effect, allowing you to get some really good damage in. This power is definitely made for those one-on-one fights, but it also seems pretty effective in group fights. In my opinion, Mora's Agony is a hidden gem in this game. Summon Karstag will summon a version of Karstag to fight for you for 2 minutes. You can get this power by defeating Karstag in his cave. I just gotta say, this is hands down the strongest summon in the entire game. He does so much work against any enemy he fights. However, with great power comes great responsibility. There are a few restrictions to this power that puts it this high up on the list. For one, you can only use this power 3 times, and then the power is no longer available. It also sucks that you can only use it outside, since many boss fights and tough encounters occur inside, but this is simply one of the best ways to deal with any threat in the game. One last issue is that Karstag is the toughest enemy in the game, so you can only gain access to this power at the end game. It's definitely the best power in the game to deal with threats that are outdoors. However, these restrictions do drag it down, but it's still a top 10 spell in my opinion. Shadow Cloak of Nocturnal allows you to become invisible while you are sneaking for 2 minutes. You can get this by reaching a certain part of the Thieves Guild questline. Part in the gameplay here, I don't think that my version of the power is working as intended, but it's probably just a mod conflict or something, so I'll rank it as how it's actually supposed to be. Shadow Cloak of Nocturnal actively takes away one of the biggest downsides to the invisibility effect in my opinion, which is that it dispels by doing anything at all. This power allows you to reactivate the invisibility effect multiple times, meaning that it's a very good tool for stealth assassin characters. It's also good for those Dark Brotherhood contracts and other stealth missions too, where you need to steal something. Overall, this power is a must-have for any characters or players who benefits greatly from the invisibility spell, but they find the downsides to be annoying. Battlecry is the Nord racial ability. Once activated, it will cause every enemy around you to flee for 30 seconds. This is really good because it has no level cap at all, which means that you can literally corner bosses in a room and continuously attack them as they try to run away. The only bad part I find with this power is I personally hate having to chase down enemies when they constantly run away. It's a great ability for any time you get into hot water, and it's available at the start of the game. What more could you ask for? Well, let's find out. Nightingale Subterfuge basically activates a frenzy spell at a single target or many targets. You can get this after reaching a certain part of the Thieves Guild questline. This frenzy will make affected enemies aggressive toward any living creature around them, including other enemies for 30 seconds. Unlike other frenzy effects, this one has a level cap of 100, so it's useful throughout the entirety of the game. This power is really good against many groups of enemies. Having every foe you face attack other bystanders or opponents is super satisfying and strong. This power also lets you get a lot of damage off to those enemies while they are distracted in the fight. You will have to fight the winner of the brawl, but they will be weakened by the time you need to fight them, so it's pretty good. This is a strong power for many situations, but I wish the duration was longer and I wish the radius of the effect was greater. Still though, it's very versatile. Hiskin is the Argonian racial power. It grants the user 10 times health regeneration for 60 seconds. According to the Skyrim unofficial wiki, the player regenerates about 0.5% of their maximum health during combat. This power would make it so that you regen 5% of your maximum health for the duration of the effect during combat. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I'll put it into perspective with a real example. So let's say you have 250 health in total, which is likely for those middle level warrior builds. Instead of getting 1.25 health points per second, you would be getting 12.5 health per second for a total of 750 health over 6 seconds. That is absolutely crazy. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of 5 potions of extreme health, all for the click of a single button. Not to mention the health regen is percent based, so this power only gets stronger as your max health increases. It's a super good power for tanking through most fights in the game, and I don't know why it isn't talked about more. The only downside is it might have limited use in legendary difficulty, since enemies might outdamage the healing rate, but it's amazing at everything else, especially since you get this at the start of the game. For 60 seconds, Highborn will regenerate 25% of the player's maximum magicka per second. This is the High Elf's racial ability. It's better than Hiskin in my opinion because it's just much more versatile. You can use the magicka on healing spells if you need the health, but you can also use it on offense as well. Using this power to spam destruction spells while also using healing spells, possibly throwing in a summon or two, makes you a force to be reckoned with. I just don't see a universe where this power is outside of the top 5, especially considering the fact that you get this at the beginning of the game for the unofficial mage class of the game. It's also a percentage-based boost, meaning that it only gets stronger as you progress. This is a very good power for any mage out there. Berserker's Rage lets the player deal double damage and take half as much incoming damage for 60 seconds. This is the Orc racial ability. This power is incredibly versatile. It can be used in any situation and it will severely help your chances of survival. It's great in legendary difficulties since enemies are tanky and they deal a lot of damage, and so cutting those numbers down is really good. It's a really simple power, so I can't really say much more about it, but it's definitely one of the best powers in the entire game for any warrior build. You also get this at the beginning of any Orc playthrough, which is just great. The Ritual Stone will allow you to raise any dead beings beside you to fight for you for 200 seconds. You can get this spell at the Ritual Stone, of course. It's very different from traditional resurrection spells in many different ways. For one, there is no cap as to how many summons you can have. There is also one important difference that makes the spell absolutely broken. That is, enemies don't disintegrate after the spell expires or if they are slain in battle. This means you can theoretically wait 24 hours to reset the power and then use it again to continuously raise them over and over. You can then collect any dead bodies from the enemies you fight, which will result in you making a grand undead army from this power. A YouTuber by the name The Spiffing Brit made a very good video showcasing just how broken the Ritual Stone is. It's been out for a while and it's got 8 million views, so I'm sure you've already seen it. But if you haven't yet, it's a great watch if you want to know the true power of this power. Overall, the Ritual Stone power is one of the strongest abilities in the entire game, and it enables an incredibly overpowered playstyle. The Secret of Arcana will make all spells cost 0 magicka for 30 seconds. You can get this as a reward from the Black Book, Filament, and Filigree. Besides the duration, it's basically an upgraded version of the Highborn power, and for those same reasons, I think this power is one of the best in the game. What pushes it over to the edge, though, for me, is the speed leveling exploit that you can do with this power. Now, I don't really consider speed leveling in my rankings traditionally, because I just think the speed leveling is not that important. However, this is one of the best ways to level up, and it's great for achievement hunting and all that, so I will consider it this time. I won't explain the exploit here, but it involves the use of the telekinesis spell. If you guys want, I can make a video explaining the speed leveling trick, so just let me know down in the comments below if that is something you might be interested in. That trick, alongside with the absolute carnage you can cause with the spell, makes it for me the best power in the entire game. Wow, that is it. That is every single normal power in the game condensed into one single list. I think that my favorite power to use out of all of these is definitely the Nightingale Subterfuge. That power is just so much fun in my opinion. I'd like to take a minute to thank you all for watching the video. This video was incredibly difficult to make and it took a very long time, so I just ask that you please consider subscribing or dropping a like if you found any value at all from this video. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.